Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, what do you have for us today?
Hello Tanvi. Well, at 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe, this is what we have coming up in the next half an hour. Iran votes, Navalny is mourned, and a firebrand British politician is back in Parliament. First, the headlines.
Iran votes for a new parliament today. Rulers seek big turnout in election amid mounting discontent. Imprisoned Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi calls the election a sham. Amidst growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, India reiterates two-state solution to the conflict, affirms continuation of relief supply and assistance. In Moscow, heavy security deployed at the church where Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is due to be buried shortly. Kremlin says any unsanctioned gathering will be a violation of the law. Welcome to DD India Global once again. Up first, news from West Asia. Iran has begun voting for the new parliament on Friday. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was the first to cast his vote. Polling has been scheduled to last for 10 hours. The ballots will mostly be counted manually and partial results may be announced on the 2nd of March. The voting is seen as a litmus test of the clerical establishment's popularity amid growing discontent over economic, political and social strains in the country. Iran's clerical rulers are seeking a big turnout to shore up their legitimacy, damaged after months of mass protests ignited by the death in custody of a young woman, Mahsa Amini, back in 2022. Imprisoned Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi, a women's rights advocate, has called these elections a sham. On the same day, Iran is also holding elections to pick 88 members of a powerful clerical body known as the Assembly of Experts, which is tasked with appointing or dismissing the supreme leader. The Interior Ministry said over 15,000 candidates will run for the 290-seat parliament today, and partial results, as we told you, may appear on Saturday.
Both are friends and people who are interested in the Iranian nation as well as their ill-wishers. From all sides, the observer of the issue of our country and the observer of our dear nation. Pay attention to this. Make your friends happy and disappoint the ill-wishers.
On to the Israel-Hamas conflict now. Amid rising need for humanitarian aid, India has reiterated its support for the Palestinian people and has reaffirmed at the UN that it will continue to supply relief and assistance to the needy in the conflict-stricken nation. Meanwhile, Israel has said that the citizens in Gaza were looting the aid trucks, and as a result of the pushing, trampling and being run over by the trucks, dozens of Gazans were killed and injured. A report.
As Israel-Gaza conflict continues, India has reiterated its support for Palestinian people and affirmed continuation of relief supply and assistance. At the 55th session of the UN Human Rights Council, India highlighted that two-state solution is necessary to end the conflict.
The situation in Palestine continues to be of grave concern, with large-scale loss of civilian lives, especially women and children, and an alarming humanitarian crisis. This is clearly unacceptable, and we strongly condemn the death of all civilians. Mr. President, we must be clear that terrorism and hostage-taking are unacceptable and deserve our unequivocal condemnation. India has a zero-tolerance approach to terrorism. The return of hostages is imperative. We must also be clear about the universal obligation to observe international humanitarian law. Further, there is an immediate need for a sustainable humanitarian corridor to provide relief. The conflict must not spread within or beyond the region. And let me emphasize that a two-state solution is necessary more than ever before. These are not choices, these are all musts, and unless we are able to address all of them, we are not going to really solve the problem. India, on its part, will continue to support the Palestinian people through our bilateral development partnership, and we will also continue to send humanitarian assistance to the people of Palestine.
Meanwhile, Israel rejected allegations that its military killed more than 100 people in Gaza. It asserted that as soon as 8 carrying trucks entered the northern Gaza, residents surrounded the vehicles and looted the supplies being delivered. The situation went out of hand, resulting to pushing and stampede, and many even got run over by trucks, leading to death of dozens of Gazans.
This humanitarian aid came from Egypt, went through a security screening at the Kerem Shalom humanitarian crossing in Israel, and then entered Gaza for distribution by private contractors. As these vital humanitarian supplies were making their way towards Gazans in need, thousands of Gazans dispensed upon the trucks. Some began violently pushing and even trampling other Gazans to death, looting the humanitarian supplies. The unfortunate incident resulted in dozens of Gazans killed and injured.
On the international side, US is seeking information on what took place in northern Gaza, where more than 100 people were killed as they waited for an aid delivery.
We are urgently seeking additional information on exactly what took place. We have been in touch with the Israeli government since early this morning and understand that an investigation is underway. We will be monitoring that investigation closely and pressing for answers.
Meanwhile, in a statement, White House said US President Joe Biden held a phone call with Amir al-Thani of Qatar and Egypt President al-Sisi about the ongoing Israel-Gaza conflict. The leaders emphasized on efforts to secure the release of hostages held by Hamas and the urgency to expedite and increase the flow of humanitarian assistance.
On to the other conflict now that has been raging for over 2 years. Russia said on Thursday that it had captured a new position in Zaporozhye, while the Ukrainian side stated that its forces have pushed back Russian troops from the west of Avdiivka. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories. Ollie, over to you.
Thank you, Tanvi. And yes, the new information from Russia so far is that a video it says has been released shows its forces capturing a new position in Ukraine's Robotyne town in Zaporizhia. Russia says its army has taken control of the village of Petrovoskoye in the direction of Avdiivka, occupying an improved position there. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians say that they have downed a Russian fighter jet in the east of the country. Ukrainian forces have also carried out strikes on 8 Russian military personnel and equipment concentration areas. Ukraine has significantly increased its use of domestic-made military equipment as Kyiv aims to become more self-sufficient amid faltering Western military aid. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister is also calling for Kyiv's foreign partners to boost their investment and participation in joint production with Ukrainian companies. Ukraine has already signed dozens of contracts for joint production or technology exchanges with its Western allies. Russia is denying any plans to deploy nuclear weapons in space, and the country's defense minister is refuting American claims that Moscow is developing a nuclear capability for space. However, President Vladimir Putin did tell Russia's Security Council that neutralization of threats in space must remain in the spotlight for the nation. On Thursday, Vladimir Putin, in his annual State of the Nation address in Moscow, warned that any escalation by NATO in Ukraine could trigger the use of nuclear weapons. The funeral of late Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny is being held in Moscow. The Kremlin says any unsanctioned gatherings near the church are a violation of law. Police officers are patrolling the cemetery where over 1,000 people have gathered to bid farewell to Alexei Navalny. He died on February the 16th in an Arctic penal colony where he was serving sentences totaling more than 30 years for charges he and his allies say were politically motivated. Veteran left-wing politician George Galloway has been elected as the new Member of Parliament for the northwestern English town of Rochdale. George Galloway took in 12,335 votes to 6,638 for the second-placed David Tully, an independent candidate in the by-election. His win highlights divisions over the Israel-Hamas conflict. Galloway ran a pro-Palestinian campaign to win over much of Rochdale's Muslim community.
A landslide, a shifting of the tectonic plates in scores of parliamentary constituencies, beginning here in the northwest, in the West Midlands, in London, from Ilford to Bethnal Green and Bow. Labour is on notice that they have lost the confidence of millions of their voters who loyally and traditionally voted for them generation after generation.
US President Joe Biden and Republican frontrunner Donald Trump have both visited the US-Mexico border in Texas, separately of course. This as the migrant issue continues to take center stage among voters, with the city of Eagle Pass being one flashpoint in the debate. Joe Biden, in his speech, condemned Republican lawmakers for rejecting efforts to strengthen immigration policies. Donald Trump didn't hold back when describing the border issue and slamming his rivals' policies.
Here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with the issue, why don't we just get together and get it done? Let's remember who the heck we work for. We work for the American people, not the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. We work for the American people.
The United States is being overrun by the Biden migrant crime. It's a new form of vicious violation to our country. It's migrant crime. We call it Biden migrant crime, but that's a little bit long. So we'll just leave it. But every time you hear the term migrant crime, you know where that comes from.
As the US presidential candidates continue to work towards the election later this year, Republican candidate Nikki Haley will be holding a campaign event in Washington, D.C. on Friday as the US Capitol holds its presidential primary. Haley has lost every nominating contest so far to her rival, former US President Donald Trump. Kate Fisher reports for DD India from Washington.
Well, Nikki Haley may not yet have won any of the Republican nominating contests in the race for the presidential nomination, but she is still continuing her campaign. And on Friday, she'll appear at an event in America's capital, Washington, D.C., as the city's Republicans begin voting in their primary, which ends on Sunday evening. Analysts say that the capital could offer her the best chance of winning a primary. The primary takes place in the run-up to Super Tuesday, when 15 states will hold Republican presidential contests on March the 5th, the most of any day on the primary calendar. Haley's always said that she would compete on Super Tuesday, but it's unclear what she'll do if she continues to lose to Trump. She's refused to publicly commit to anything beyond then. In Washington, Kate Fisher reporting for DD India.
The United States Senate has passed a short-term spending package to avoid a government shutdown. The bill, that is the fourth such stopgap measure, was approved in a bipartisan 77-13 vote. It will help in running some federal government agencies through March the 8th and others through March 22nd, preventing a shutdown that would have kicked in on Saturday. The bill will now be sent for final approval to President Joe Biden. A planned mission to the International Space Station has been delayed due to bad weather. SpaceX delayed its first NASA astronaut launch of 2024, once again citing unfavorable weather conditions in the US state of Florida. Officials say the launch will now be attempted at 9:46 a.m. IST on Sunday. DD India's Sally Patterson reports.
A SpaceX rocket is due to launch 4 astronauts to the International Space Station this weekend. Liftoff is planned to take place at Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in the US state of Florida. The people on board are NASA astronauts Matthew Dominic, Michael Barrett, Jeanette Epps, and Russian cosmonaut Alexander Grabenkin. SpaceX originally designed its Dragon crew capsule to carry up to 7 astronauts, but so far the company has only flown a maximum of 4 people at a time. Now they're due to embark on a 6-month mission to the ISS and will relieve their colleagues from the Crew 7 mission. But the latest mission has been delayed several times. It was due to head off in February, but got pushed back. And now the crew's takeoff has been postponed again because of weather concerns. NASA wrote in an update that unfavourable weather conditions were expected in offshore areas along the flight track of the Dragon spacecraft. The liftoff will be broadcast live online. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
And with that, I'll launch you back to Delhi. Tanvi.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us all from London. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Global energy-related emissions of carbon dioxide hit a record high last year, says the International Energy Agency. And 1 billion people globally are now obese, a condition linked to increased health problems, cites a WHO report.
Curious case of Julian Assange. The future of lunar exploration. And the biggest snake discovered in the Amazon rainforests. Watch Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Back to Asia. A massive fire at a 7-story building in Bangladesh's capital Dhaka has killed at least 46 people and left dozens injured. According to the fire service officials, the fire originated in a restaurant and quickly spread to other floors. Bangladesh's Health Minister Samantha Lal Sen told reporters after visiting the Dhaka Medical College Hospital that the injured have been admitted with severe burns and are in critical condition. A 5-member committee has been formed to investigate the incident. Back in India, at least 4 people were injured after a blast took place at a famous eatery in the Whitefield area of South Indian city of Bengaluru. Shattered glass and furniture were seen strewn on the floor of the cafe. An NIA team and fire brigade team reached the spot and launched an investigation into the incident. Meanwhile, the police have confirmed that the blast was not an LPG cylinder blast. More from India. The Prime Minister of the country, in the second leg of his visit to 3 eastern states, visited West Bengal today. During his visit, PM Modi inaugurated multiple development projects in Arambagh town of West Bengal. The projects cater to sectors of rail, ports, oil pipeline, LPG supply and wastewater treatment. He inaugurated Indian Oil's 518-kilometre Haldia-Barauni crude oil pipeline, developed at over 2,790 crore rupees. While addressing the gathering in West Bengal on Friday, Prime Minister Modi said that more people have come out of poverty in the last 10 years. He stressed that with the efforts of the central government, the life of the common man is becoming easier.
बीते 10 वर्षों में देश के 25 करोड़ लोग गरीबी से बाहर निकले हैं। ये दिखाता है कि हमारी सरकार की दिशा सही है, नीतियां सही है, निर्णय सही है और उसका मूल कारण नीयत सही है।
Earlier, the Prime Minister also visited the eastern Indian state of Jharkhand. During his visit, the Prime Minister inaugurated several development projects worth over 35,700 crore rupees in Jharkhand's Sindri. The projects cater to fertilizers, rail, power and coal sectors. Prime Minister Modi inaugurated the Sindri fertilizer plant of Hindustan Fertilizer and Chemicals Limited to the nation. Further, the Indian Prime Minister also inaugurated Unit 1 of North Karanpura Superthermal Power Project in Chhatra village of the state. The Prime Minister also flagged off 3 trains. These include Devgarh-Dibrugarh train service, MEMU train service between Tata Nagar and Badampahar, and long-haul freight train from the Shivpur station. To boost self-reliance in defence sector and Make in India initiative, the Defence Ministry signed 5 major capital acquisition contracts worth over 39,000 crore rupees in New Delhi today. The contracts were signed in the presence of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. Out of the 5 contracts, one was with HAL for procurement of Arrow engines for MiG-29 aircraft, 2 with Larsen & Toubro Limited for procurement of close-in weapon system and procurement of high-power radar, and 2 with BrahMos Aerospace for procurement of BrahMos missiles and shipborne BrahMos system for the Indian Defence Forces.
Today, Larsen & Toubro has signed 2 contracts with the Ministry of Defence. These are for equipment to be supplied to the Indian Air Force. The 2 contracts include a high-power radar which will be deployed at different locations by the Air Force for identifying aerial targets at very long distances. We have also signed a contract for the close-in weapon systems, and the close-in weapon systems are used to protect vital assets of the country. These are very advanced equipment, high technology equipment which have been developed within the country and which will be produced here.
India and Sri Lanka signed a contract for a hybrid renewable energy systems project in Colombo. The agreement will center around the 3-island project of Dwelt, Nanativu and Analaitivu islands of Jaffna. The initiative aligns with the India-Sri Lanka Economic Partnership Vision, highlighting the energy sector's priority. With generous assistance from India, the project underscores the broader $5 billion development partnership portfolio, showcasing ongoing collaborations and future endeavours in the realm of energy and beyond. The signing ceremony was attended by the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Santosh Jha, and Sri Lanka's Minister Indika Anuruddha. Both emphasised India's commitment to bilateral energy partnerships and human-centric development. And we now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Sicily is grappling with a severe environmental crisis. Lack of rainfall during the winter has pushed the region into a state of drought, prompting the regional government to declare a natural disaster. The dire situation has raised concerns among experts as Sicily becomes one of the few regions in Europe with the red drought zone. A group of climate scientists have said that more intense rainfall causing landslide and widespread flooding is expected in southern Philippines in the following days. Sporadic heavy rains have caused flooding in several parts of Mindanao Island between the months of January and February, leading to major landslide that killed 98 people. Global energy-related emissions of carbon dioxide hit a record high last year, said the International Energy Agency. Energy-related emissions in the United States fell by 4.1% last year. The loss of oxygen is due to the climate change and extreme droughts, which caused over 40% of the carbon dioxide rise. And in some shocking news, more than 1 billion people globally are now obese, according to an updated study from the World Health Organization and an international group of researchers report. These findings noted that obesity rates for adults more than doubled between 1990 and 2022 and more than quadrupled among children and adolescents aged 5 to 19. The research is based on data for more than 220 million people in more than 190 countries. And as we wind up this edition of DD India Global, researchers have discovered the world's largest snake species in Ecuador's rainforest that split off from its closest relatives 10 million years ago. The reptile was discovered during the filming of a series titled Pole to Pole with Will Smith. The researchers claim the species of green anaconda snake to be about 10 million years old. That's all we have for you in this edition of DD India Global. Do tune in for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.